Hola, mujeres. In this episode, we are focusing on chronic pain and how this can affect our wellness in general. So, we will be having a conversation and we'll be learning from therapists, certified chronic pain coach, and sound practitioner, Carla Garcia. Carla is a first generation Latina who draws from both her personal journey and professional expertise to help people heal from chronic pain and improve her emotional well being. Carla has a special focus on supporting Latina women in understanding how trauma, stress, and unprocessed emotions can show up as physical symptoms, using a holistic approach which combines mind body coaching with sound healing to guide clients in relaxing, unwinding, and retraining their brains to turn off pain. With that, I would love to welcome Carla to our podcast. Bienvenida, Carla.
Thank you so much for having me. It is an honor to be here with you. I feel like I already know both of you already.
That's great.
Love
um,
that.
so because everyone's probably already, thinking like, okay, what's this about chronic pain and how that affects our wellness in general? I'm gonna go ahead and dive right into the questions just because we have a few and they're all very educational questions, to be honest. So the first one we always ask our guests to tell us a little more about yourself and why, right? Like why were you inspired to become a chronic pain coach, as well as actually launching a business that we saw, which is called Finding Paths, where you actually focus on healing and mindfulness, and as a Latina specifically, because we've never heard anyone, like a Latina actually focused on chronic pain specifically. We know a lot of therapists, and we've had them on our podcast. You probably know that we have a lot of people come in and talk about mental health in general. And it's just interesting that you focus on chronic pain. So we're just wondering, like, why are you inspired?
It's so interesting because I feel like I was called into this field. I didn't know about it. I think it's still very early, like even just in general, like there's not that many chronic pain coaches out there yet, and this information is still being pushed out little by little. But taking it back a few steps, I was born and raised in LA. And when I was in undergrad, I had a friend that had inspired me to pursue my MSW, my master's in social work. And I think he saw something in me that I just wanted to do positive things in my community. I was already leading women empowerment circles for young teenage girls in high school. And I was doing that through a nonprofit. And I think he saw that I was just naturally a social worker at heart. And he said, I think that you should apply to get your master's in social worker. And I was like, no, I don't think that's the path for me because I didn't really understand what a social worker really was. I think I just had a skewed like idea of what it was. And I thought it was like, taking children away from their home. And I wasn't really informed at the time until I really looked into it, saw how aligned it was with like me wanting to give back, doing what I was already doing with teenage girls. And so I went for it, got accepted into USC, which here, I am born and raised in Los Angeles. So USC is a very prestigious, well-known university here for us. And I never imagined myself applying there, getting accepted. But somehow the universe made it happen. God made it happen. And through that program, I got to do an internship because they encouraged all of us to do an internship our first year. And that internship included therapy work, which initially I was very hesitant. I was like, no, I don't want to do therapy work. I just know that that's not for me. And they said, no, everyone has to do it. So I did it and I met incredible clients, Latina clients that changed my life. I, shared space with them and they thanked me at the end of my internship and said, you're going to do great things, and women out there are so lucky to have you as a therapist. And I was like, oh, I wasn't really thinking of going down that path, but now that I've made these connections, like, how could I not? Like, I actually do enjoy it. And I was like, I guess I'm going down this path now. And so from there, a year later, I was graduating, and I happened to get this opportunity to join a team that was already doing chronic pain work. I had no idea what it was, but I was like intrigued by it. I was like, wow, I've never heard of this. What do you mean we can heal without like physically touching someone? So I kept kind of learning about it. They hired me upon graduation, which was, amazing, and I took time to learn, I took training. And since then, I've been, helping folks that are suffering with unexplainable chronic pain symptoms, or just chronic symptoms that they've been dealing with, such as skin issues, IBS. It doesn't have to be, exactly pain. It can show up as, itchiness, numbness, anything that the brain can turn on. I've worked with or have seen in consultations or sessions with clients. So it's a lot, but at the same time, I feel like this path just kind of was brought to me by the universe, and I love what I do, and I get to help people, get their life back, because a lot of folks have been struggling for months or years. I've met clients that have had symptoms for 20 years, 20 plus years, and are in their 70s, in their 80s, and have been, suffering through this for a long, long time. And so they've tried it all. They've gone to doctors. Some have gotten surgeries. Like, they've gone to, very in more invasive procedures, unfortunately, that haven't, gotten to the real root of the problem. A lot of the folks that I see struggle with stress, chronic stress, or repressed emotions that they're unaware of at the time before coming in to work with me. And so I shed light on the importance of mental health, expressing your emotions, feeling your emotions, and how they can get stored in the body if we don't attend to that.
I love that scene. Like, I already took note on anything that the brain could turn on. Like, that's already of like, okay, this is what chronic pain is. So thank you so much for sharing that. Because now I'm thinking like, okay, I'm already thinking with some family members of there's certain, like, I have an aunt. Every Sunday she gets a headache. And I'm like, something's going on in your life that happens on a Sunday that's triggering that headache. So it's like, okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Um,
There is a term for that, if you don't mind me sharing it.
yeah, go ahead.
It's called a conditioned response. The brain learns to make an association between two things, right? An event, an environment. I've had folks that I've seen that, every year around the same time get certain symptoms. And so we get to exploring, like, what happened during that time? What was going on during that time? Who were you with? Where were you? What was going on? And then we uncover, something that has led the brain to feel unsafe.
Okay, what was that called again? The symptom?
Conditioned response.
Ambition?
Conditioned
Oh,
response.
condition.
Mhm.
Sorry, conditioned response. Okay, love that. So, with that, from all the clients that you have had, like, it's you're seeing a lot of what the brain turns on. You talked about very a lot of different things, which was eye opening to me. But based on that, like, what is the most common cause for chronic pain overall? And is it different for us Latinos, Latinas?
Great question. So, what comes up is chronic stress, is what I'm seeing, right? We don't acknowledge that we're in a constant state of fight or flight for some time. Chronic, especially when it comes to symptoms and just in general, is 3 months or more. So it's not just one thing in our life, but maybe we're navigating a difficult chapter and we don't realize it. And we're not slowing down. Maybe we're just pushing through the day to day, not realizing how much it really is impacting our mental health and just our overall well being. and then the other is repressed emotions. And that is a big one for a lot of folks. And when mention the Latinx community, right, the first thing that comes to mind, at least for me, it might be due to my own experiences, the pressures of being a first generation, college student, first generation, child in general. I didn't realize it until I got into this work, but I had experienced my own chronic symptoms. And when I first got hired, they asked us all, like, have you all experienced chronic pain before? And I said, no, like, I've never, experienced it until I really thought back, like, months later when I was doing the work. And I was like, wow, I did have chronic pain because my knee pain that I had in undergrad was present for like a year or more, and I couldn't really figure out like what it was. I think initially it started with some level of a knee injury because I used to work out a lot back then, and these symptoms can also start with initial injuries and then change into what we call neuroplastic symptom, which means that the brain has turned on the signal or kept it on when it shouldn't be. It's just like a false alarm. So for me, it started with an initial injury and then it just wouldn't go away. Um, there was a lot of fear there. It was very limiting, very frustrating to walk around campus. I had like a little, I don't know what it's called, not a brace, but like a little sleeve for like my knee. And I would have to stop and massage it. And it was just very frustrating, but I didn't realize it until now. I was like, wow, like I'm a first generation college student. I was a first generation college student navigating all of that on my own. It was scary. There was a lot like stress from, classes. Like maybe that's what was causing my pain to, continue far more than it should have. And then as a graduate student, I had a different form of a mind body symptom. It didn't last as long, thank goodness. But right before a major exam, my first ever exam in graduate school, I had the worst neck pain ever, to the point where I couldn't turn my head without being in excruciating pain. It brought me to tears. I had to go to the doctor and it was scary. But looking back now, I was like, wow, it was that exam that led to, my neck just tensing up in that way. And it was alerting me that something dangerous was happening. And this was not a physical threat, but more of a psychological threat of, I was terrified and I feel emotional just thinking about it because I didn't have people in my life to ask like, oh, what is it like? What was it like in graduate school? Like, what should I do? How can I prepare? Like, this was so new to me. And I would study like hours on end, just scared of failing. Like, I don't want to get kicked out of graduate school. And my mom would have to like ask me to come eat, because we've been studying for so long. And I was like, no, but I have to like do this. So I really took it seriously and it was scary. Like I remember just feeling terrified my first week of graduate school because I had no idea what to expect. And so naturally it led to that symptom, that neck pain that, now I reflect on and see that was mind body for sure.
Thank you for sharing that. Now that you mentioned that, based on your own experience, I always think about like I always get like lower back pain, and it's like so random, like specific times of the year, and I think that it was because I have two kids. And I don't know how people say like I got the epidural twice, so I'm like, oh, it must be that. It must be
Mhm.
that. Like people, I don't know if that's a myth, but that's what people tend to say, that like, oh, it's maybe because you got that and you had it twice and now every winter then now you get back pain. But then now that you're saying that, I think about it and I'm like, well, maybe it's because like I'm an eldest daughter and I actually have to, and I mean, I don't know if you, but Rosie and I are both like eldest daughters. And so we have a lot that we have to manage, not only for our own family, like our, we have husbands, we have kids, we have our own jobs, but then we have our parents, right? And then we have our siblings. And then everything's like we're expected to do everything for everybody. And so I feel like that takes a toll on us as women, and being the eldest. So I'm like, oh, maybe that has to do with that because it typically happens when like I'm being asked from
Mm,
everybody in my family like this is like, oh, can you do this for me, can you figure this out, can you like, because you have to be kind of like, oh, a nurse, a therapist, a financial manager, like all these things. And so I'm wondering like maybe it's not necessarily the like the fact that I have two kids and I got an epidural, but it's probably because I actually have all this weight on me as an eldest daughter that's actually reflecting that way. I don't know. I'm just saying.
yes, the body will express the words that we can't, right? I don't want to do that, right? Deep inside, like that's what it's saying. And it's just, it can manifest in that way. And also, just to add, to that first piece where you said, we often hear how epidurals, can cause, pain like after we've gotten it done. And I'm not a mother yet, but just kind of taking from what I know of chronic pain and chronic pain healing, I know that fear can be something that can lead to the development of pain, whether it's diagnoses that my clients are getting. And these medical terms sound so scary just on their own. So that can lead to an increase in pain showing up, seeing scary, scans, MRIs, x-rays, like, oh, you have a bulging disc. And that does not always necessarily mean that it stems from like that part. So when you say that, it kind of got me thinking of things that we have heard and that stick with us, right? Like, oh, well, if it happened to that person, it can happen to me. And like that fear, just knowing like that could cause pain could turn it on its own, right? Because it stays like ingrained in us and, oh, it must be that. And that's going to happen to me. So something to sit with, that fear can also turn on a symptom or keep it on longer than it should be on for.
Good to know. Now I'm learning so many things today. So we do have a question here about self-care. And the reason why we have this question is because um we're our podcast, we're big, like huge on self-care and asking women and empowering them to actually take care of themselves. However that looks like for them essentially. But I am wondering, what is there a connection between chronic pain and self-care at all? Like how, I don't know, how are the two connected or are they not connected at all?
Very connected. And I would say that the lack of self care and self love is what can lead to the development of chronic symptoms. And it's not just like one thing, like if you skip taking care of yourself for one day, but it's a buildup. If we're constantly ignoring signals from our body that are telling us, hey, slow down, you've been doing too much this week or this season, we can experience chronic fatigue. And that's a way that the brain is like forcing us to slow down because you're not doing it. So I'm going to get you to somehow slow down. Or brain fog, which I've experienced as well, is your brain just trying to get you to stop. Just stop. Don't do anything. Just rest. But to go back to the question is, yeah, it'll get you to set those boundaries that you're needing to set because maybe on your own you weren't doing that. And so when you say, I'm experiencing pain, maybe it's an easier way to get time for you to rest, right? If you say, I have a headache or a migraine, your partner or other people in our life will understand, like, okay, she's in pain. Like, I'm not going to, ask this of her or of, whoever is feeling the symptom. It kind of gets us out. It kind of speaks the words that we can't say. So when we don't prioritize ourselves, the body will start to manifest these symptoms in a way that really do get us to pay attention on a level that we weren't doing so before. So we're not only talking about, spa dates or hot baths, which can be very relaxing, and I love them myself, but self-care here is, less people pleasing, being less hard on yourself, noticing when we have perfectionist tendencies and maybe that's activating our brain and not serving us in the way that we think it is. Like that's what comes to mind. when you say self-care, like in the work that I do, it's a lot more deeper than just throwing on a face mask, but really taking the steps that you're needing to take that maybe you haven't. Like I said, pressures, right? Wanting to do your best and wanting to be there for everyone. And so the body and the brain will have you take a step back from that one way or another.
I love that because especially our Latinos, Latinas, we're conditioned to always work hard. Like rest is not allowed. You're looked at as lazy, or but then, especially in my experience, like I would always beat myself up if I took a nap, because I'm like, oh my gosh, yo sí soy vaga because I'm sleeping in the middle of the day. But to me, it's like, to me that's my self care. Like you probably have heard in some episodes, like what's my self care is taking a nap, because it's like I'll have these long days, and it's like in order for me to perform at my best, I need to have that nap. Like yesterday, I needed to. It's like I was up since like 6:30, and then I did a couple things, and then it's like, okay, after I fed my daughter, she fell asleep, I fell asleep, and then I was able to keep going till midnight that day. So it's like I still have the half of my day to go, but if I don't rest for a little bit, I'm just gonna be dragging, I'm gonna be in a bad mood, and I won't perform as I need to be. So
Right.
thank you so much for explaining that, because it was my body telling me like, okay, like you're, it's like my legs was hurting, and it's just like, okay, this means I just need to listen to my body. So thank you so much for sharing that, because it's like a lot of, I know that we preach a lot on self care, and that was something I have personally have had to learn. So
Yeah.
for all you listeners, again, this is another reason of why self-care is so important, because start listening to those, as Carla said, those words that your body cannot say. I mean, those words that you cannot say, your body will express those for you. It will manifest.
Yeah.
Um, but something else, Carla, that you have been sharing on social media, and I've heard it out there, is like the vibrations, how they heal us. So, we learned that you're a certified sound practitioner, and that you also open Finding Fast business through it. So can you talk a little bit about more of how that relates to chronic pain?
Yes. So the way that that happened is I was noticing that some of my clients were struggling with like more traditional guided meditations. And I figured, you know what, let me explore the sound healing field. And maybe this is another way that I can help them still practice a form of meditation because that's what it is. It's just a different form of meditation. So I found that they responded well to it, is something that motivated them to take care of themselves in that way. And maybe it just felt like it resonated more versus them sitting down and guiding their own meditation. It just sounded like they were struggling a little bit. But not only that, but it does have a lot of, healing elements to it, like on a cellular level, like you mentioned, because of the vibrations and the frequencies from the instruments. So I will use singing bowls, I will use a wave drum, which helps relax the body. That means less tension. So if we have someone experiencing less tension, more being more at ease, feeling more relaxed, then that's going to lead to the nervous system feeling more regulated. That's going to lead to less pain or pain to be eliminated. So, in a way, it started with me trying to help my clients find an easier way for them to meditate, but I found that it can also just support overall in general with their healing journey because of the relaxing, benefits from it. Less stress, that means that their body and their nervous system isn't as activated if they're practicing, maybe they're playing their own instruments at home, or they're attending a sound bath, or they're attending one of my sound baths. I find that another thing that's very helpful for them is to be in community, because a lot of these sound baths take place in community where there's 10 people, 15 or more, can be a big group, and they'd like to be a part of something because most of my sessions are virtual actually. And so I don't get to meet with them in person. I work with folks from all over the world, different time zones and different, countries and cities. So with the local clients that I do have, I want this to be an opportunity for them to find community because it's hard to find it within the chronic pain population. They feel very isolated. They don't know other people that might be experiencing chronic pain like they are, and they feel lonely, and that's a big topic that comes up in sessions. So I figure that this is another way to also help them build that sense of community, and it's all going to benefit the nervous system. So whether it's the sound and the soothing frequencies and vibrations, or just the sense of community that it's providing them, it's better benefiting their healing journey.
Hmm, awesome. So, Carla, on that note, though, are you able to share with us a success story where your holistic approach, with the like chronic pain, like actually doing therapy for that, and then also the sound bath, like all of that approach, how did that make someone's like one of your clients like how did that make their life more like I guess better after they went through that approach with you?
So I'll start by saying that I am so proud of every single one of my clients, and they're all amazing and have put in the work because it's not easy. But there is a client that comes to mind, and when he came to me, he was initially not leaving his home, barely leaving his room because he had so much pain from even the simplest movement, such as typing, using a phone. That was something that he was not able to do because of pain that he experienced during or even like hours later. So he was going through a lot. And so when we started to really get into what was going on at home, right? Really digging deep, not just like the physical, but like what was really going on, right? So when you mention a holistic approach, like it's not just about the movement, but tapping into emotions, right? Current stressors or past stressors that someone was navigating, helping them be extra gentle to themselves. And with this particular client, I do have to add that one of the things that I strongly believe helped here was just our connection, the rapport that we had together. A lot of folks don't have someone that they can confide in, like outside of a therapy space or coaching space, and so we were able to build that together. So when you say holistic, like I think of all of that, the mental, physical, emotional, psychological aspects. So I'm pulling from different directions, but I also want to show up authentically and genuinely for all of my clients. And with this particular client, we would show up, we would laugh, like we were just keeping it real together. And I introduced them to sound healing as well. But a big component of that was just helping create a safe space for him to share, to talk. We bonded. That is so important just as a therapist and as a coach to highlight. But, long story short, he is now in a place where he went from not working to volunteering, working. At some point, he had two jobs because they had offered him a job and he was still kind of maintaining his first job. And then he transitioned to a really good job and he was biking from one end of the city to another. He was traveling with his friends, like, it was incredible, like, it's still just mind-blowing to think that when we first started working together, brushing his hair, right, even just simple things like that, that we think of, like, for him, it was a lot. It really took a toll, and he had to be very careful of how he spent his time, what he did, like, had to conserve his energy and only did what he absolutely had to do because it caused a lot of pain. And now he's, dating and doing everything that he wants. And I'm so happy for him and proud of him. But I, think of him often because his story was just like, I don't know, mind blowing, amazing from where he first initially started.
Wow, that's awesome. The question that comes to mind is how long did it take him to get from brushing his hair to now riding the bike from one city to another city?
Great question. And it varies for every single client because they're coming, in different stages of their healing journey. Someone might already be knowledgeable about mind body healing and then come to me and say, I already have a foundation, just guide me on the blind spots. For him, he had tried another program, but didn't feel so safe in it because he was being pressured to do things that he wasn't ready for. So for him, I really had to take our time together, again, build that rapport. So it took months for us to get to that point. But every time, it was like one step, right? Practicing in session, right? Doing the movements together, talking about the emotions, processing things that were going on. So it was a combination of things. And so it did take a couple of months for us to get to that point. But even then, right, when you think about where he was and like where he ended at the end of our sessions, like it just took months and he was already dealing with that for years. So it was truly incredible. He put in the work, right? He had some fear initially and he had to like push through that fear and be brave and take very courageous steps because it was terrifying for him to have the sensations turn on, but we worked through that and he felt more empowered by the end of it, and that decrease in fear also played a major role in his healing, but it took time to break away from that.
Thank you for that transparency. And I just wanted to ask because one of the questions that we have on here is so that people listen that you need to be patient and gentle with yourself. But what advice would you give to someone just beginning their journey to heal from chronic pain?
Mm, yeah. Something that comes up frequently is the trauma that folks experience from, medical doctor visits. And I want to invite folks to continue advocating for themselves. I know that it's very hard because sometimes doctors will make them feel like they're lying or they're exaggerating. And I want to validate them and say, their pain is real, right? Your symptoms are real. Your pain is real. It's not all in your head, right? Your brain might be activating it, but it doesn't mean that it's made up. And so you deserve to advocate for yourself. If something doesn't feel right, continue to advocate for yourself. You deserve that support. And the other thing is, if a diagnosis doesn't resonate with you, or you keep getting multiple diagnoses that just don't feel right, I invite you to explore the mind body route. It can only support you. Even if all you get is more regulated nervous system, your body will feel so much better than it is now. But exploring that little by little, whether it's, reading on it, or checking other videos about mind body healing, being open to it can take you far. You don't have to buy into it all the way because I know that it sounds weird and it's new and it's like, wow, what do you mean that we can heal ourselves, right, using our brain and rewiring our brain? It is possible, and I know that it sounds very wild, but it is true. We have our own healing powers. We can rewire our brain through neuroplasticity. And so there's a lot that we can take away from mind body techniques and mind body tools. All you need to do is be open to it and give it a shot, and it can take you very far in your healing journey.
Thank you for saying that because, as you know, for Latinos, it could be a myth that, the whole mental health issues and all that, right? Where they say like, no, you don't need to go. And we say this all the time, right? Like, you don't need to go to a therapist. Like you, do something else, like you're not like therapists are for crazy people. And the fact that you're saying like, you have to be willing to try and put in the effort. If a traditional Latino, you know, listens to this, they would probably be like, "Oh no, that's crazy. Like I'm not going to do that." Right?
And
Um but I love that you're saying like you have to be willing to put in the effort, right?
Mhm.
And putting and willing to work with someone else to make sure that you can go on that journey from where you are today with the pain to where you're hoping to be without the pain, right? But I don't know that everyone like understands, right? That's what you'll have to do. Some people want a solution like right now, and
Yeah.
that's why I'm assuming that's why they go to the doctor, right? Like they like, nope, I want it now. I want medication, and I just want it to go away. But it sounds like if you really want to, it's not permanent when you do it that way. Like if you really want to get rid of it, you'll have to actually go through
Exactly.
the journey.
Thank you for shedding light on that because it's so true, and I tell this to my clients all the time. This work that we're doing now is not just for eliminating the pain, right? I don't want you to just, get rid of the pain one day to another and then, not work on the things that were leading your brain to turn on the pain in the first place. Like our goal is not to get back to, quote unquote normal or to the old version of you. We want to create a new version of you, like build a new lifestyle. We don't mean completely revamping, their entire lifestyle, but just like adding, little tools here and there, new perspectives. Like that's the goal, to teach them how to show up for themselves in a way that they have never done so before. And it does take commitment. It does take effort and repetition so that the brain can leave the old default setting and then create a new default setting, but it does require them to show up in that way.
Thank you. So we would love to continue to chat with you for a lot longer because this is very important educational information, not just for us, but I know for our listeners who can probably relate to this. But we don't want to make this like super long, right? So we want to, the last question we have here, because we want to make sure our listeners, if they're interested and they want to learn more about chronic pain and the holistic approach that you take on healing that and working with people and the therapy sessions and like the sound baths, we want to make sure that people know where to find you. So are you able to share like your social media information, or do you have a website, contact info, so that if they want to continue to learn more about you and follow you, then they can do that?
Great. So the best way to find me on social media is via Instagram and TikTok, and that'll be under Your Pain Coach. And that's the social media kind of for all things related mind body healing, chronic pain, and then the platform that I use for my sound healing is Instagram and TikTok, and that you can find me under finding dot paz, which is the Spanish word for peace, because I would love for everyone to tap into that and find some peace, inner peace. So that's finding dot paz, and you can book private sound bath sessions there. You can search up, community sound baths that I am hosting, because that's starting to pick up, and I offer that in Los Angeles, within the surrounding areas, in San Diego, and within the surrounding areas as well. Virtual sound bath, if someone is interested in exploring that and they're out of, the state. So those are the platforms where people can contact me. And if you are interested in one-on-one coaching, email is another way to get a hold of me, and that is carlagmsw@gmail.com.
Thank you so much, Carla. So I'm going to wrap it up. I'm going to give our listeners some takeaways. And I would say is start noticing those pains that you're having during specific times of your life. Like I mentioned earlier, like I'm already going to go and put this podcast on and look for certain videos on Carla's Instagram. I say Instagram because I'm on Instagram, but just so that she starts seeing like, hey, look, I have told you like something's going on some Sundays that is triggering that headache. So for you listeners, like stop and really think about like, hey, have I been having a headache, or do I have a shoulder pain, or do I get, a lot of bowel movements during XYZ periods of my life, or certain events, or during a specific time of the year, as Carla mentioned, like especially now as the holidays come up, a lot of us go through a lot of trauma. So think about that and start noticing like what signals are being sent to your brain that you can't express with your words, like as Carla mentioned earlier. I loved how Carla said that, because yeah, our brain is connected to everything and it's telling us how to feel, what to do, etc. So really listen to that. um so another thing is, go to her web Instagram or TikTok, finding that buzz, because the whole vibration, like I've never really tapped into that, but now after listening to Carla, I definitely do. Like I really want to go on YouTube and look up certain vibration audios depending on like what type of healing I want to do, because I know I'm sure we could go down to that Pacific. But another thing is, as I just listened to Carla's, she has these virtually. Like I didn't realize that these sound baths are done virtually. So definitely go check out Carla's Instagram and TikTok. We're gonna add on those links to our show notes. So you can attend those virtually. I know I want to attend one virtually just to see how it sounds, because honestly, I've done some in community at work and you're like, feel your toes and you feel like you're coming up from the ground. But sometimes um you need a little bit more. So I'm definitely gonna be tapping into Carla's expertise to know like how can I really put my brain to focus, because you cannot do this alone. Like for especially for us Latinas and Latinos, that we have so much going on, it's hard to turn off our brain and to just relax. So that's when a coach like Carla comes in, that helps you really disconnect and connect with your mind, body, and soul. So I know I'm giving a lot of homework, but just wanted to like just point out those highlights that were really main takeaways, and I know that we could start doing right now. And just be gentle and patient with yourself as you start this chronic pain healing journey, as Carla mentioned, and always advocate for yourself. I know we have said in other episodes on different topics is we know our body best. We
Yeah.
live in it day in, day out. So listen to your body and go follow Carla at on Instagram or TikTok on Your Pain Coach, or finding that pause. We'll definitely add those to the show notes. So thank you so much, Carla, for joining us. It was so great. And we definitely learned a lot. So thank you so much. Y hasta luego. Ciao.